What is going on, guys? We are back playing some more Surviving with EnderIO. And today we're going to be setting up the EnderIO storage system, which is a very unique storage system compared to most of the other ones that are offered by modded Minecraft. So typically people will go with, applied energistics or refined storage, pretty much any of that. But the EnderIO one is a little bit overlooked, and I think it's very valuable because it has the capability of hooking up to pretty much any storage in the game. So let's say you're working with EnderIO. Typically, you might think that you can only use the EnderIO storage blocks to function with the inventory panel you'll be accessing it from. Well, that's not actually true. You can pretty much hook up conduits to chests, storage drawers, anything you can imagine from essentially any mod. I'm not sure if there's integration for every single mod, but for most of the big ones, you'll be able to hook it up and it'll be able to pull from any of those. So it's very unique in that aspect that it does not only allow you to use EnderIO blocks for the actual storage setup, which should make it relatively easy to integrate into your base if you're using a ton of different mods and don't feel like switching everything over to one generalized mod for the storage. Now, there is one unfortunate prerequisite, and if you saw last episode when we discussed the VAT, you'll know what that is, but it's that this system requires the production of nutrient distillation. So I have that going over here, and I would advise you, if you do not have this production automated yet, you might have a little bit, but if you don't have it automated yet completely, you want to go back and watch some of the previous videos, which would involve setting up an automated farm for the nether wart, setting up an automated mob farm for the rotten flesh, and then automating the actual production of it, nutrient distillation, mainly just because you are going to need a constant flow of this to actually have the storage system running. A lot of people ask why you need it. I suspect it's because you need remote awareness upgrades, and it's kind of as if, I guess EnderIO treats it as if the storage system is alive or something like that, which is why it needs this. But you do require this along with power to get this whole thing to function. Other than that, though, the only other prerequisites are going to be the resources you need to craft it. Now, I just want to state that this should be the last time we have to use this chest and crafting table. Pretty excited for that. We'll finally be upgrading it today. But as you can see in here, there's a lot of different stuff that we're going to be working with that we haven't really touched upon before. Now, the first thing that we are going to do, before we even discuss crafting anything else, is we are going to be working with the Ender Resonator right here. So if we look at recipes to make this, we've made it before. It uses an Enderman head, which should be relatively easy to get if you have a mob farm and the Ender. Everything else is relatively cheap, but then we need to use this and upgrade it in the Soul Binder to a Sentient Ender. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. I'm probably butchering that. But yes, we are going to be upgrading this to the next tier of it, let's say. And it requires the Soul Binder and a Soul Vial with a Witch in it, along with the Ender Resonator. Now, the reason we're doing this at the beginning of this is just because it's going to take a very, very long time. So let's throw these in there. We're going to use Player XP, and we're going to allow it to start upgrading. Okay, well, this one actually doesn't take that long. I guess it's a lot quicker than when you actually make a spawner or something along those lines. But I guess we can just grab this out now. Okay, so we got the empty Soul Vial and the upgraded Ender. So we will put this back in here, as this is going to be used for the inventory panel itself. So the inventory panel is what we are going to be making first. And we can just look, clicking on the wrong one right there. But the inventory panel's recipe right here, you can see it requires 4 dark steel, 2 pulsating crystals, the sentient ender, and then a remote awareness upgrade and a fluid tank. Obviously, the fluid tank is there because you're going to need to be able to store, it stores 2 buckets of nutrient distillation in it. So you can bucket it in yourself. There is a small internal buffer, but you're probably going to want to hook it up so it automatically gets filled. So the first thing that we need to do before we can finish crafting this is make all the remote awareness upgrades. And that's what all this stuff right here is for. I'm making a couple because we're going to need a few more for what we're doing today. But we will just put this in. It's going to require some conduit binders around the corner, some silicon, and then some electrical steel in the bottom, and an Eye of Ender in the center. And there you go, remote awareness upgrades. So you might need a couple more, and you'll see why in a little bit. But we're going to be using 3 for today just because this is not going to be a huge storage system. So now we can grab out all of this, go through, and finish crafting this up. So we'll make that right there. And now we have the inventory panel. Now keep in mind, there are remote inventory panels. There's also the advanced inventory panel. These do require being filled with stuff. This one requires Dew of the Void. This one requires the nutrient distillation. But the only difference, if you don't know, is the advanced one can access it from anywhere in the same dimension. This one can only access it within certain chunk distance. And then there's the Ender inventory panel, which requires Vapor of Levity, which can access it from anywhere at all. So if you're curious about those, they pretty much act like the generic inventory panel, but they're just remote access. So not going to be covering that today. I might cover it eventually, but they're not super complicated to work with. So we've got the inventory panel. Now this could function on its own. We could hook this up, get nutrient distillation in there, and we could hook it up to this chest right here with some conduits and a remote awareness upgrade, and you will be able to see all of these items in here, and you'd be able to interact with them without actually accessing the chest and just from the inventory panel itself. But that is not what we're going to be doing today, because EnderIO offers its own sort of storage option to go along with this, and that is going to be it starts at the tiny inventory storage system, and you can see then it goes small, medium, big, large, huge, and then enormous, and then it goes to the warehouse and the extended warehouse. So there's a lot of different upgrades for this, but pretty much all it goes from, and I assume these values have not changed yet, but it's 81 stacks at the tiny one, up to 540 stacks for the extended warehouse, so it just kind of acts like a very large chest in a single block. So before we're going to start working with all this together, we need to make these. And if we click on the first one, the recipe is a little bit expensive for the first tier of it. You might be thinking, wow, so you get pretty much just like 1.5 chests, I think it is, roughly that for the 81 stacks, and it costs all of this to make. That's a fair price for it. But the nice thing is that every upgrade you make after that, every subsequent upgrade, is the same recipe, and it's really cheap. It requires machine chassis plates, a chest, and dark iron bars. Every single one. So you can see all these, same recipe. All you're doing is putting in the previous tier's storage, system storage, and upgrading it like that. So we're going to go all the way up to the highest tier. We're just going to craft all this up. It's going to be 8 different tiers for it. I'm not going to list all the different inventory sizes for the middle ones. Just know that it goes from 81 to 540. So first things first, we're going to make the tiny inventory system storage. And then we are going to go, and I guess it's a little bit unfortunate because we have to go through each one. Actually, no, we really don't. We can just put this up here, this over here, right there, and just click it like this. Go through all of them relatively fast. The only thing that really changes is the texture on the front of these blocks, and even that's not very noticeable. Kind of bland, but it's whatever. So now that we have those out, we're just going to grab the conduits out. We've got item conduits, fluid conduits, and energy conduits. You are going to have to supply items to this system. You are going to have to supply fluid through the nutrient distillation, and then of course you're going to need to supply power to the extended warehouse itself. So what we can do now is go through and break all of this and just free up some space over here, because this is where we're going to be putting it down, mainly just because we don't really need this chest anymore and I want it to be close to the vat. So we can start hooking up these conduits over here, and it might get a little bit weird. We're not using pressurized conduits right now. Let's disable that. We don't want it hooked up there. I don't think we should run into any problems with this if we set this to always active. Yep, we should get it starting to pump out in there and allow it to make some more. So we need to think where we want to put stuff down. So you are going to need to put a conduit between the inventory panel and whatever you're pulling from. So we're going to do the inventory system storage right here. So we can put this down, let's say right up here, and we can put the inventory panel down, let's say right over here. I'm just going to assume that we're not going to extend this anymore, so we'll put this down over here. Oh, and it's unfortunate that that just happened. I should not have allowed this to start pulling stuff out to start. That was a mistake on my part, so what we should be able to do is set this to active with a redstone signal, so it should stop. We should be able to throw this down over here and let it fill up, and then hopefully it'll get all of the stuff out of this so that it'll actually be able to reconnect all of these together. Okay, so once it sucks all of that out of this, then it should allow them to reconnect. Little mistake on my part, I don't even have the Yeta wrench right now, which is what's mainly causing the problem. So once it drains all of this out, they should reconnect. I think it should be able to completely drain it out, right? Oh my gosh, can it not? It can't completely drain it out. Okay, well, times like this make me really wish I had the Yeta wrench, but let's hook that up like that. Not a huge loss, we got all of it out of here, but little mistake on my part. Always have a wrench handy. But we can throw this back down over here now, break it and toss it down over here. It contains the nutrient still, but as you can see, like I said, it's got 2,000 millibuckets, so 2 buckets storage. And now what we need to do is run some power over here. Actually, we can put this on now so it's always active and actually pumping it over here. But now we got to get some power to the system storage. So you'll notice right now that these bars here are gray. If you hook up some power to it, they immediately light up. So that is just one very easy way to tell if you have power going to it. And yes, it is required for power to go to it for it to actually be able to function. So what we're going to do next is take the item conduits and hook these two up together. So put an item conduit there and there. And you need to add a remote awareness upgrade to the different conduits. So we can put, like if we go in here, you can see that we don't have the capability to access any storage right now. If we were to click things in here, it's in this main area here, which is the internal storage of the actual inventory panel. But we do not have the capability of accessing this, and unfortunately, we can't even go in there and access it directly because you can never access this block directly. So what we can do is change this to insert. We can change this one to extract, always active. Now what this will allow us to do right at the gate is if we were to put stuff in here, you can see that it can get sucked out into this system right here. So now we're actually able to use this system. Now you could pump stuff in here from other chests and it would go into this storage system. But what this does right here is it allows this system to have items put into it, and then they immediately get sucked out using the conduit into here. And then we can just access them from here. So we can throw all these different items in here and you'll see they all get sucked out. Okay, so now that we have that whole system hooked up and we see how to actually connect everything to the EnderIO storage blocks themselves, we can look at how to connect it to other mods storage blocks. So let's just take a vanilla chest, for example. We'll throw it down pretty much anywhere that's easy to work with. It's not going to stay there. You don't need to worry. It does look kind of gross, but everything's good to go. It's on insert mode over here. And we can look in here, we can just throw in some energy conduits and they will get sucked out. But you can see that they don't actually show up over here. You know, it's not taking a second, it's not lagging. There is a reason they're not showing up over here, but they are in this chest right here. Well, they should be showing up, but the problem is we do not have a remote awareness upgrade. So what this says is it's a function upgrade for the item conduits that allows for inventory panels attached to the network, so any of the networks for the item conduits, to see and extract items from the inventory independent of the conduit mode. So if we were to put that in there, now what this means is you can leave it on insert so that any items that go in here will get sucked out and put in here, and so they don't just sit in the internal storage in here. But it also means if we look back in here that we can now see these. So we can now use them, we can pull them out, we can do all of that, put them back in there, let them get sucked back in, and they actually show up. So it's just something important to note that you can circumvent the use of this if you're only using EnderIO storage blocks themselves, but if you're using any that are vanilla or anything along those lines, you are going to need the remote awareness upgrades. So I had turned this one to in out. We can just set this back to insert over here, and we should be able to get rid of this chest and go back to just using the previous setup for it. So we throw them in there, they still get sucked out, and note that this one does not have a remote awareness upgrade, but we're still able to see them because it's the EnderIO block itself. So I know a lot of people get confused about that when they're using other mods combined with the EnderIO ones, but this is why I would highly suggest just using the EnderIO blocks themselves. Now what we can look into is doing a little bit of crafting. So let's say that we wanted to go and make a conduit binder into the facade. So you can see that they've got the crafting grid there and everything, and we can take the items and we can pull them out, set them in the grid, and there we go. We've got the facade itself. What we can do now is we can save this pattern right here. There's a maximum of 6 patterns that can be saved, so we can click and save this, and then if we were to clear the crafting grid or pretty much just take these out, we can remove each one, put them back in here, and then if we were to click on this, it would set it back up again to go. We also have the option of shift right clicking to pretty much fill the crafting grid with the maximum amount that we can make on this block. We also have the option, if we were to put these back in here, to go over and let's say we want to look a block up in NEI, JEI, whatever you have for your actual items themselves. Say we go over here and we see this. Well, we can click on it and it'll pull the items in there for us. We can clear it then. We can also come over and we can shift click and it'll pull the max amount in for us again. So remember, left clicking on the recipes will always get you the regular amount, whether you're refilling using this or refilling by shift clicking, it will get you the maximum amount that you can. It'll also try to pull from your inventory first, and then it will pull from the system itself. So if you do have some items on you that you're already crafting with, it won't suck them out of your system and leave a bunch in your inventory, which is kind of nice if you're trying to declutter a little bit. Now let's say you've got all these 6 patterns on the side and you want to get rid of them. Well, you just have to right click them and then they're gone. So it's very, very easy to get rid of. The only annoying thing is that there is no automated crafting directly supported by the EnderIO system. So the best you're going to get are those 6 like remembered crafting recipes. It's pretty nice that they're easy to get rid of, but still, that is one of the huge downsides of this, is you do not have the ability to do auto crafting like you would with applied energistics or refined storage, unfortunately. But it's a very simple system to set up. And then you've just got the generic things on the side here. There's a filter card slot, so you can place configured item filters in here to select which items to show. Very, very rarely used for this because most people want to see pretty much all the items. You have the ability to search ones up here, so if you search for chest, it'll show you that. And then you've got the items to sync this to whatever you're using. Now, I would highly suggest this just because it makes it easier to kind of see what you're going for. So let's say we wanted to go for making a chest. Well, we can see there's already one in there, but let's say there isn't one in there. Well, then we go up here, we see this recipe, and then we could see we have missing items in there for it. But if we had the items, then we could easily craft it and it would be no problem. So it is very good to have it synced with that. And then there's also the sorting items by whatever you want filter. So there's sort items by name, whether it's starting from the beginning or end of the alphabet. By mod ID, you can sort them both directions for all of these, and then by quantity. I know a lot of people like to sort by quantity. I personally like to sort by name, like this, mainly just because I'm going to be searching stuff up. But I really think that's going to be it for today, guys. There's not a ton that needs to be covered with this, outside of just a couple miscellaneous things that can be added, such as the remote access to this stuff. But it's a very, very simple system to work with once you have the nutrient distillate. Just remember, you need the remote awareness upgrades in any conduits connecting to non-EnderIO storage systems, and also that you cannot directly access these systems. So if you're going to make these and think that you can store stuff in them, you will need to pump it in either from a chest. You can pump it in from anything, either from a chest using conduits or from this inventory panel itself. And the reason it works is because there is an internal storage in this inventory system here, which will be this area right here. So if you do have it on extract, that's why this stuff is getting sucked out here. But if you have it hooked up to nothing, you can still access this nice little 2x5 area down here. And that's why if you're wondering why stuff gets sucked out and why we've got all these settings on the different conduits, it's because we want stuff to get pulled out from here and put directly into these systems. Other than that, though, there's really not much to cover. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. I know this is kind of a confusing thing to work with, and sorry if I was a little bit scatterbrained today. I've had a lot on my plate recently and didn't have a ton of time to prep for the video, but I will do my best to help you guys out if you have any problems with it. If you enjoyed the video and found it entertaining or informative, please feel free to give it a like, as it does help me out a lot, and I will talk to you guys later.